What about supplementationally or pharmacologically? What are you using if you need to dial in focus a little bit more?
Nothing. I shouldn't say nothing. So I love caffeine, although I'm not convinced I'm really getting a benefit from it. I am a very, very fast metabolizer of caffeine. So I probably consume 300 to 400 milligrams a day. But if I don't, nothing happens. Like I can't appreciably tell a difference. So for me, I love the taste. I love the ritual. I love making coffee. My wife loves coffee. It's the one thing I can do first thing in the morning that makes her happy. So it's like, so I don't, even though people would argue that caffeine, of course, is a cognitive booster. I'm not convinced I appreciate the metrics of that. I do occasionally put a nicotine patch in my mouth. I probably get more benefit from that. Truthfully, and maybe I'm just not aware of other products. The product I use, I think, is too high a dose. So it's a 7 milligram pouch. So you have to kind of time it because, as you probably know, nicotine is a very unusual molecule where at low doses, it provides a heightened sense of awareness. So it's actually concentrating you, but then you actually cross over a hump and then nicotine becomes actually quite relaxing and sedating.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's an unusual molecule in that it has behavior. So, both of those properties are ideal. It's great to be focused when you need to be focused. It's also great to be relaxed when you need to be relaxed. It's just you don't want those at the same time.
Yeah.
So with these 7 milligram pouches, and again, there's people watching this that I'm sure are going to be like, "Come on, you idiot! Don't you know all this other set of products that are out there?" I used to enjoy gum more because you could chew 2 milligrams at a time, which was really the right dose to just induce the focus. Again, nicotine is an addictive compound, so I don't say this lightly, but for whatever reason, I don't appreciate any of that. So in other words, I might have it 3 times a week for a month and then forget about it for 6 months. And I don't seem to miss it in any way, shape, or form. And obviously the mode of delivery matters. So, I'm not remotely interested in
vaping it.
Yeah, I'm not at all interested in that. It's got to be basically gum or a lozenge or something.
It's so interesting that the dose can take you from where you want to be to where you really don't want to be. But it's the same.
Yeah, or it depends. Like again, sometimes if and I don't use it in this capacity, but if you really need to relax, a 7 milligram slug of nicotine will relax you.
That would just make me want to throw up. That would make me want to throw up everywhere. I'm very nicotine sensitive.
Yeah, no, that's a real issue.
So what about, we're talking about...
There's one other compound that I add to the list, although I rarely need it. But if I'm doing a lot of time zone movement, I will also lean on modafinil.
Okay, and how would you use that for yourself?
Just use it as a quick reset on circadian rhythm in the new time zone, right? So for example...
Take it first thing in the morning?
Yes. So take it first thing of the morning of the new time zone, which is not my morning internally, right? So if I had to go to London tomorrow, and I had to be there for 48 hours and then come right back, my strategy is, let's say I'm leaving Austin at 2 p.m. So 2 p.m. Austin time is... What's that, 9 p.m., 8 p.m., depending on daylight savings. So I would put myself to sleep on the plane within 2 hours so that I go to bed London time, even though it's 4 p.m. Austin time and I don't want to go to sleep. And then...
What would you do to induce sleep? Given that you're in the
I have kind of a
day?
whole long protocol, but basically it comes down to how early did I wake up in Austin the day of, when did I exercise, what did I eat, and then I'm going to try to shut off my adrenal glands with phosphatidylserine. I'm going to take trazodone, a high dose of melatonin, which is not something I normally use to sleep. And that's going to put me out.
What were the first 2 things that you mentioned?
Phosphatidylserine and trazodone.
And what do they do?
Phosphatidylserine inhibits cortisol output from the adrenal glands. And trazodone is a funny drug. It's actually, it used to be used as an antidepressant in the 80s, but it never really took off because it had this nasty side effect of making you tired. So as SSRIs and the like came on board, it sort of fell by the wayside. We now use it as a remarkable sleep drug. It's incredibly safe. And more importantly, it doesn't just induce sleep, it induces stage-appropriate sleep. It's a very helpful drug for people who don't suffer from any initiation insomnia, but who do tend to wake up intermittently at night, either due to anxiety or just anything that kind of gets people up. Trazodone basically buzzes over
Smooths that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've then taken that. Melatonin, what sort of dose?
Again, normally I don't take any, but if I'm looking for the hammer, I'm going to take 3 milligrams.
Wow. Yeah, that is a lot. I mean, here's just before we go on to how to then wake up when you get to London, the levels of dosage that you can buy in CVS of melatonin
It's crazy.
is wild. Can you just give the overview of how the dose curve works for melatonin with humans?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is physiologically, the pineal gland doesn't make that much melatonin, right? It's making micrograms of the drug. So I think the smallest dose I've ever seen that you can buy might be 300 micrograms. Like maybe there's someone out there that makes a
0.3 of a
0.3 milligram.
Yep.
Yeah. That's probably the smallest I've seen. Maybe there's a 0.1 out there.
I've got a spray, and each spray, sublingual spray of it is 0.3.
Okay. Yeah.
So unless I can manage to half trigger it, there's no way I could get
But most of the time you're looking at 1 to 5 milligram, i.e. 1,000 to 5,000 micrograms of this stuff, and even 10 milligrams. And the problem with that is it seems if you look at the literature, and I haven't looked in a while, but the last time I did, doses north of about 600 or 700 micrograms, 0.6 to 0.7 milligrams, tend to really suppress melatonin receptors in the brain. And so as a long-term strategy, it's probably a bad idea.
So would that create basically a physiological dependency?
Yep. So I try to get patients off melatonin, truthfully, and reserve it for jet lag and for travel only, and not rely on melatonin as a nightly sleep aid.
But
if you're going to, I want them to be as low as possible.
48 hours. I can't mess about here. I need to hit it with a hammer.
Yeah. If using this example, if I want to fall asleep at what feels like 4 o'clock and wake up in 7 hours, and then 2 hours later land in London
and be functional
and be 100% functional, and then take that modafinil upon landing.
What sort of dose of the modafinil? Is that immediately upon waking?
Yep.
Right. And what sort of dose? Any idea?
I mean, I usually take 200 milligrams if I'm going to take it, but modafinil can be dosed. Typically, the low end is 100 and the high end is 600.
Okay. What about armodafinil? I've heard about that.
Comparable. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
You're speaking to someone that's never taken modafinil. What's the sensation of it like?
It depends on the individual. So I perceive nothing. I'm just more awake, and I feel fantastic, but I don't get a high from it. I don't get any stimulation from it. I know there are some people, I can't tell you what fraction of people, but a non-trivial fraction of people actually experience a negative sort of stimulation effect from it.
What do you mean?
Like they feel like it probably feels like what ephedra used to feel like back in the day.
Oh, it's rushy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And now again, I would argue that in those people, they're simply taking too much, and that they're very sensitive to it, and they might get the benefit without that negative side effect if they down the dose. My wife, for example, can't take it, but that's probably because she's only ever tried 200. And I would bet if she ever really needed it, I'd probably give her 50 or 100.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Marek Health. When I wanted to get my blood work done in America, I asked around, I did a ton of research, and Marek Health came back as the best quality service that you can find. And I loved it so much, I reached out to the owner to actually partner with them on the show. They genuinely understand training, diet, supplementation, and pharmaceuticals. They don't want to make interventions you don't need. They will make suggestions that are minimum dose and appropriate for you and your goals and your age. They're great. It is literally like having a personalized biohealth hacker in your pocket that understands you and your bloods at all time. You might have heard that I took my testosterone from 495 to 1006, and that was with the help of Marek Health, without using TRT, but by optimizing everything else that I was doing in my life. Right now, you can get the exact same service that I got by going to the link in the show notes below, or heading to marekhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's MAREK health.com/modernwisdom.